found in your Bible the verse in 1 John, the Epistle of John, chapter 4, verse 18. 1 John, chapter 4, verse 18. Just one verse this morning, but a great, big thought that you can take home with you, and it will help you to grow. Here's what it says, 1 John, chapter 4, verse 18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear, because fear hath torment. He that feareth is not made perfect in love. And I could add the next verse that says we love him because he first loved us. Oh, what a great truth. Good enough to read again. One more time. 1 John 4:18. There is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear, because fear hath torment. And he that feareth is not made perfect in love. You may be seated. Now I want to say to you, and I'm assuming that you already know, that there's two kinds of fear. I have to apologize if I wave my arms around. There's a fly that likes me today. But I don't like him. So we may have a quarrel before this is over. But there's two kinds of fear. One will help you and the other one will destroy you. Now in the book of Psalms, it says in Psalms 111 verse 10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And we've all heard that verse and we know it well. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. But this has nothing to do with us cowering in a corner away from God, trembling and shaking at the very thought that he might be close by. It has nothing to do with the very mention of his name making us nervous. It's not that kind of fear of the Lord that brings wisdom and is the beginning of wisdom. Jesus, speaking to his disciples, said in Matthew 10:28, fear not them which kill the body, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Yes, there's two kinds of fear, there's no doubt about it. But one is a reverence and a respect for the power and the authority of one that is greater than you. One that has the power over you. But the other is the destroyer that will devastate your very existence. It's the thing that puts creepy crawlers in your brain. It's the thing that will make your body sick and your head as well. We think that if we take away all the guns from the people who would honestly give them up, if there was a law passed, that we will have no one shooting little kids in schools anymore. How foolish can we be, not knowing, not believing, not understanding that the reason that people hurt people is that they are fearful, that they live without God, that they are godless. There's something wrong inside their head, not at the end of their trigger finger. And as long as there's something wrong here, as long as there's something wrong here, in the head and in the heart, there will always be those who will hurt, maim, and kill others, because fear makes us sick. What is fear? Well, sometimes we have fear of the future. We don't want to go any further than where we are. Some people, they will tell you, I don't want to grow up. I don't want to live in this world. I don't want to have to make decisions. I don't want to have to face life. Some fear the job that they have, that it may end. Some fear that it'll be too hard. They won't be able to keep up, or they won't even be able to get the job. How about those who get married and they're afraid that they might marry the wrong person, or maybe that they did marry the wrong person? Or how about those who just shack up together for fear that they may make a mistake in saying those vows at all? How about the fear of being disrespected? You know, that's one of the greatest things that a man wants out of a marriage, is to be respected by his mate, but how about the fear that you won't be? How about the fear that you will grow old and be alone? How about the fear of growing old, being alone, but the fear of death? How about the fear of knowing that the train of death is clacking down the track and it's coming faster and faster, and you hear it louder and louder, and you know it's getting closer and closer, and you fear death? One just said a week ago, I don't want to die, but they did. We have a fear of death, but sometimes there's something that's more fearful than death, something that causes something worse than death, and that is to live a life with no meaning. Live a life afraid to live and afraid to die. Sometimes the fear of living is more awful than the fear of dying. Job had an experience. He had an opportunity to make a decision about that kind of fear. In Job chapter 3, verse 25, it says, "For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and that which I was afraid of is come unto me." I don't know what he feared. I don't know why he feared, but it sounds pretty conclusive that he lived in a place of wonderment about whether things were going to go bad, because everything had gone so good. He was the richest man of the East. He had everything. Do you know that there are some people who have nothing that are afraid that they will never have anything? And there are those people who seem to have everything and afraid that they will end up with nothing. And Job says, "For the thing which I greatly feared has come upon me, and that which I was afraid of is come unto me." And hell kept knocking at his door saying, "Job, you've lost some more." But here's the thing about Job. Job lost everything that he possessed, but he was not possessed of everything that he lost. And that's what makes the difference, because Job did have meaning in his life, and he had a belief in God that kept him going when everything was destroying all the stuff that he had accumulated. Meaning comes from having a purpose, and God is the one that gives the purpose. Man struggles in his existence to feel secure. He wants to feel secure about his money. He wants to feel secure about his relationships with people and family. He wants to feel secure about being successful in this world. Many times, God only gets in the way of his desire to become successful. But the price tag for that, the price tag for thinking that God gets in your way, is torment of the soul. Let me tell you this: when God is never enough, nothing will ever be enough. You will never be satisfied. Let me give you a verse from Colossians chapter 3, verses 1 through 3. "If ye then be risen with Christ, seek those things which are above, where Christ sitteth on the right hand of God. Set your affections on things above, not on things on the earth. For ye are dead, and your life is hid with Christ in God." You see, when you're afraid of life, but you give it to God, and you died of this world, coming alive to that world, then you can live in this world as though you are alive. But the things that happen to you will not throw you into the throes of fear of your very existence of living in this world. There's a story in the Bible that talks about people who are accumulating, who are trying, who are building. There's nothing wrong with building. It talks about two men that were building a house. And in the book of Matthew, chapter 7, verse 25, talks about the end result of both of these men building. Here's one of them. "And the rains descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house. Now, if you skip down a few verses, it'll say the same thing about the other fellow's house. It'll read it with identical words. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and beat upon that house. So what's the difference? Well, there was one that built on the rock and one that built on the sand. Now let me put the verses back together and read it for you correctly. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. You drop down to verse 2, and it'll say the same thing. And the rains descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew, and it beat upon that house. And then it changes, and it says it fell because it was built upon the sand. Sometimes we have fear because we're building upon the sand, and we know that there's nothing in our future that's ever going to work out for eternity's sake. We need to build on a sure foundation, the sure foundation which is love and which is and who it is, Christ, takes away the fear of this life and living it, even though sometimes it's difficult. David asked the question. Paul gives the answer. David asked this question: if the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? He was troubled. You know, he was chased often by Saul, and you know that his life was in danger. And finally, he just sums it up in Psalms 11:3. If the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? Well, there's the question that people live with and never come to an answer for. They live their whole life. Every day they get up wondering if the foundations are going to crumble, if everything's going to be destroyed. If the foundations are destroyed today, what will I do? And David put it in words for you. What will the righteous do? Well, you know, there's two people out there. There's the righteous and the unrighteous. Let me give you a little information about both of them. If the foundations be destroyed, what shall the unrighteous do? Well, let me tell you, you're in big time trouble with God and eternity. And your foundation is already cracking. You may think that it's strong, but there's cracks in it, and it will soon crumble. Or you might have the space of a few years, 70 plus, who knows, but your foundation is crumbling a little bit more every day. That's one group of people, the unrighteous. If the foundations be destroyed, what shall the unrighteous do? You better call upon God. But you need to call upon him now before the foundations are broken and crumbled. Here's the other group. If the foundations be destroyed, what shall the righteous do? I'm going to let Apostle Paul answer that question. It's in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 19. He says, nevertheless, the foundation of God standeth sure, having this seal, the Lord knoweth them that are his, and let everyone that nameth the name of Christ depart from iniquity. Oh, David, ask your question again and let it ring loud and clear down through the ages. What will the righteous do? They will say when every foundation that they've ever built crumbles. Everyone that's temporal, everyone that was natural, everyone that's only for time and not for eternity, they will say when it all begins to crumble, nevertheless, the foundation of God standeth sure, having this seal, the Lord knows who you are. The Lord knows where you are. And the Lord cares. So they shut down your business because of COVID, and your business never comes back and you are bankrupt. You close the doors. If you're on unemployment, nevertheless, the foundation of the Lord standeth sure because he knows those that are his. You went to the doctor. And he said, I've gotten your test back, but the news is not good. you've got cancer. And at first the shock runs through your brain, and then your heart takes over. You say, well, I'm almost home. The doc says, you've got cancer. That word scares so many people, as the expression would go, scares them to death. But for those who are righteous, nevertheless, the foundation of the Lord standeth sure. The phone rings in the wee hours of the night, and the officer says, are you Mrs. So-and-so? She, with sleepy eyes and weary voice, says, yes? Well, we're sorry to tell you that your child was killed by a drunk driver an hour ago. Nevertheless, the foundation of the Lord standeth sure, for the Lord knows those that are his. Nevertheless, life is turned upside down. You're barely making it as it is, and then the boss comes and says that we're sorry, but we're downsizing, and you've got to go. Nevertheless, what shall the righteous do if the foundation be destroyed? Nevertheless, the foundation of God will never be destroyed. The Lord knows your name. Takes the fear away, my friend. Your life is turned upside down by those in authority who claim that we follow the science when they didn't even know what the science was that they thought they were following. And they've changed their statement every once in a while, month after month, ever since they claimed to be following the science when they didn't even know where it was leading. They said, if you take one jab, you will not get COVID, and then Mama died of COVID. They said, well, you need 2. Then they said, no, you need 3. And they said, no, you need 4. Then they said, you may need to get this every year. And they followed the science when they didn't have a clue what they were talking about. And now you find out that more people who have been vaccinated get COVID. And they can pass it on. Nevertheless, the foundation of the Lord standeth sure. Here's the problem. Are you standing on it? Because if you are, it takes all the fear away, for fear cannot stay where there is perfect love. Perfect love casteth out fear. There is no fear in love. There's no fear in knowing the God that many people reject to run after success in life. I tell my stories, especially in this congregation. You've heard every story probably that I've ever told, because I've told them over and over again, because I realize that you may be forgetful. So you don't think I'm telling them because I'm forgetful. But I'm just going to assume maybe you forgot, so I'm going to tell it to you again. Now let me tell you the real reason. Well, the real reason is I just like to tell them. But the value of the real reason is that these messages now are going up on YouTube, and they haven't heard my story. So I apologize to you that have heard them all. But I told you this story one time that when I was just a little kid, I got a half bed that was placed over by the window of the bedroom. We had the front porch of our house torn off to be rebuilt, so you could just walk from the sidewalk right up to the house. There was no porch. You didn't have to come up on anything to get to my window. I'm laying there in the bed, and I'm awake. I guess everybody else was asleep. It was dark. It was night. It was late. And there was a street light next door. It was dimly lit, but enough that I saw this man walking down the sidewalk. And I thought, wonder who that guy is walking down the sidewalk so late at night. And he kept getting closer and closer. When he hit the edge of our driveway, he started to head into the driveway. And then I got afraid. He's coming on our property. And he walked across the driveway and he kept coming toward the house. And he walked across where the lawn had been, and then he walked across where the porch had been. And I'm getting more fearful by the moment, and this man is coming closer and closer to my window, and I'm laying there, and I'm scared, stiff with fear. He comes right up to the window, and there he is. I can't tell who he is, but I know I'm scared. Until he says, "Jimmy, it's Dad. I forgot my key. Get up and let me in." The unknown that scared me stiff was dispelled by the voice of my Father. You can learn something from that little story today, because I did. Matter of fact, I learned most of my deep spiritual stories by my little trivial life and the things that happen that are so common to life. And God will put his finger on it and say, that's the way it is in the spiritual realm. All fear went away when I heard my Father's voice. Do you know your Heavenly Father? Do you know his voice? I jumped out of that bed. All of a sudden, I felt powerful. All of a sudden, I felt wonderful. All of a sudden, I was happy. All fear was dispelled in an instant because of the relationship that I had with the one who owned that voice, who called my name. And I ran to the door and I let my dad in. Perfect love from the Father casts out fear. Do you know it? If you don't, the rains will be coming. The winds are going to blow. The floods are going to come. And they're going to beat on your house. You know what that's called? Life. Get used to it. The exact same description of difficulty was used on both houses. It's life, whether you build on the rock or on the sand. But here's the difference. When you build on the rock, nevertheless, when you hear your Father's voice, nevertheless. Yeah, but preacher, you're going to go down in a flame of fire one of these days. You're going to get sick. They're going to tell you that you've got the terminal disease. You're going to get hit by a car. You're going to get run over by a train. Well, let me tell you now in advance so you'll know. And remember, I don't care how I go out. I care where I go when I leave. And that's why there's no fear. My Father loves me. Do you know it? Father, I pray in Jesus' name that you will touch the lives of those, Lord, that are suffering today with fear that they cannot get a grip on. The Lord David said when he was just a shepherd boy, the Lord leadeth me beside still waters. Lord, you're the one that leads us into peace and safety. And though the world comes and shakes and rattles and rolls, nevertheless, the foundation of the Lord stands sure. Having this seal, the Lord knoweth them that are his, and may I add, and we know you back. And in that perfect love casteth out fear. And I thank you for it in Jesus' name.
Amen.